So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast. This is Season 6, Episode 246.
Stranger Things 4, Wytheville UFO flap, and upcoming celebrity paranormal shows.
Yeah. So, here we are again. I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
And this is the CreepGeeks Podcast, where we talk about all sorts of cool stuff. We're an offbeat podcast. We explore paranormal, cryptid, UFOs, supernatural, all sorts of interesting things like that. Broadcasting from a secret location, and we're not going to tell you where, because that makes it more mysterioso.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In the mountains of Western North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, so here's the deal. If you want to contact the podcast, you can do that. We actually have a phone number for you, and you can use this toll-free, internet-based phone number to call and leave us a message.
And that phone number is going to be 575-208-4025.
That's right. Roswell area code.
Yes.
If you give a crap. But I do. I thought it was clever.
Okay.
But, you know, sometimes you do clever stuff, and other people don't think it's clever. Yeah. So, anyway, moving into the podcast, we do have a lot of stuff to talk about, and we do want to thank our patrons.
Yes.
Because their support definitely makes the podcast happen and buys us coffee.
Yeah, and we've got a couple.
It's delicious.
We got one or two new patrons, so we need to update our little thank yous when we do our next Patreon episode. But if you'd like to support us on Patreon, please follow a link in the show notes. The show notes contain everything we talk about each podcast episode, but it's pretty much patreon.com, and then you can find us, Creep Geeks.
Yes, and you can also follow along on Facebook and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. If you just search for Creep Geeks, you'll find us. You can go to creepgeeks.com as well. We have a contact form there. You can click and contact us. If you have anything you'd like to share, you can do that. Okay, so let's talk about stuff. And we do have a couple things we typically do in the podcast when we get rolling. Like we have a 4T term of the day. Or 40 on, if you want to say it that way.
Yeah.
So what is our 4T term of the day?
It's pretty simple, but whenever I hear somebody use it in a sentence or talk about it, I don't know if it kind of dates them in their language or if I actually respect them more because they're actually calling things out for what they are. But the term is flap. And according to Merriam-Webster, a flap is a state of excitement or agitation, such as a tizzy or an uproar, or something that generates an uproar, i.e. the Tic Tac UFO flap has doubled the interest in ufology amongst everyday folks.
That's very nice.
Yes. But whenever I see certain things referred to as like flap or incident, it kind of determines my approach to it. So if I hear something like the Roswell incident, I'm like, ooh, get serious. But if I hear flap, then I'm like, I wonder what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I hear it completely different.
Okay.
When I see flap or flaps, I think of friendly local auto parts store. From back in the forum days where, you know, with my Volkswagens, I used to have air-cooled doodle bugs, the VW bugs, and buses. I'd work on them and stuff, and back when the forums and all that sort of thing were kind of in their fledgling, back, you know, when they started becoming more usable, and people would make comments like, yeah, man, just go to your local flaps, they'll have it.
Oh, and see, I think of flap.
So that's one of my favorite acronyms. You know, coming from the military, I had lots of acronyms.
For me, like a lot of, like, when I was growing up, some of those magazines in the checkout aisle, they used flap, and it always meant something scandalous or something shocking happened.
Yeah.
So, whereas incident or situation is like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I kind of get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I also kind of look at like UFO flap, like where it's just a bunch of crazy sightings going on and people in boats and lakes going, no, man, that was not the Goodyear blimp. And you know, they're like, yes, it is. I was like, no, it's not. You know, just like random sampling of people seeing something.
Yeah, like a random.
All over the place. And
like random or a huge amount that suggests tizzy, you know. Everyone was in a tizzy over the UFOs.
No, see, I don't like that.
Okay.
I think that's inappropriate. Yeah, you know. It is what it is. Now, okay, one of the things that we also do in the podcast is we like to tell you what we're going to eat when we get done doing the podcast. It's kind of like a dinner thing. Somebody mentioned a long time ago, Like, what are you guys eating or something? I don't know what the deal was. I think it was because we were going to do some mukbangs.
Oh, yeah.
And we just never really did it because I don't like the idea of just sitting there gorging on pizza.
I don't like eating in front of people as it is.
Yeah, it's hard enough to eat in a restaurant.
Yeah.
At least in a restaurant, you feel like more people are concerned about concentrating on eating their own grub instead of looking at me spilling crap all over my shirt.
I think it's like an actual nightmare I've had, like where I'm eating soup in a restaurant in public.
Yeah. Well, soup is okay. I have a hard time with soup, so that's just me.
So, yeah. But tonight's dinner is kielbasa and sausage. Or kielbasa and cabbage. Yeah.
You ruined the whole thing.
I know that.
Show's over.
All right. Bye-bye.
Collect your kielbasa and cabbage at the door in a bowl. Put it in a plastic Ziploc bag. You take your sausage and kielbasa to go in a bag. And put one of those little straws in the corner of it.
Oh, God.
Like when you get, like, drinks and stuff. Like
festival drinks?
Yeah.
No. Cabbage fresca.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the name of the street corn that I like.
Elote.
Yeah. I wasn't going to try to be Spanish.
So it'd be cabbage.
Elote.
Could you imagine cabbage agua fresca?
Well, I mean, it would be okay as long as you have an alternate selection of hot dog water to go with it. It'd be delicious.
Yuck.
So speaking of hot dog water, we just finished Stranger Things 4. And, here's the deal. I know I'm an old man. Or I'm getting there. I'm in my 50s. So the 80s, because I was born in 1970. Mm-hmm. And one of our avid listeners who comments when we share our podcast to YouTube, because it is hashtag listenable, which means that you can start it and just let it play and listen to us talk about dumb stuff for a while, says that he's older than me, and I don't really have an understanding of how age works. And it was his birthday, so happy birthday. So, and I get it. Hey, I'm, you can call me the youngster. It won't hurt my feelings, but I'm not. I'm in my 50s, and they have references in Stranger Things to the 80s. Now, Stranger Things is basically, a show. We're talking 4 seasons, but there was a break in the middle where the kids got all old because of COVID and stuff like that, where they couldn't continually run back to back, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a group of kids, and they're having some weird, mysterious things happen in their town, just to put it in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
And they go and they find stuff, and they, this is supposed to take place in the 80s, and so they make reference to all these 80s sort of tropes and things like that. And the story is actually pretty good. And, somebody's got psychokinesis, and somebody is trapped in an alternate dimension or parallel.
Telekinesis or psychokinesis?
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know.
It sounds better than telekinesis.
Okay.
I think psychokinesis is the same thing. How dare you call me out in the midst of my...
I think we need to study up on our 14 terms of the day.
Here's the deal. We're not even talking about that at this point, because you went on about whatever your flap you were talking about in tizzy and old 1930s flapper lingo.
Okay.
But okay, it's a good show. Now, when the first season it came out, and I'm looking at these 80s references. I'm from the 80s, right? Because I was born in 1970. So by the time the 80s hit, I was like 10, almost the same age as these guys, maybe a little, a little younger, because they were in school, junior high or something like that. And I was really kind of aggravated that they were getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Because they were. But then, I'm like, after a couple episodes in, I'm like, I kind of like this show. These little weirdo kids running around doing these, fantastical things because they're fighting good and evil, and they're adding references to different things in there. And so I just started to let it slide. Mm-hmm. You can't really expect people that aren't from the 80s to be accurate in the 80s, and they're doing the best they can, because honestly, if you look at it, the 80s was 40 years ago, almost.
Yes. No, it was.
Shut up. Don't, just stop.
1981.
Yep. That's how old you are. Old lady.
Thanks.
But anyway, so we started watching the show. We got season 1, 2, and 3. And honestly, I don't really remember too much about season 1 and 2 or 3, because there's a 2-year gap in there roughly. But anyway, season 4 came on. Mm-hmm. And we started watching it. And I thought Stranger Things season 4 had been out for a long time, and we just happened to notice it.
No, I've been paying attention quietly.
Well, I have not. I'm
like
downloading on our phone so we could plug in this stupid $40 adapter to make it play on the TV.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when I'm like, oh, wow. All the episodes are there. We must really be late on this.
Yeah.
And so we blazed through it over, a couple of days because it was good. It's kind of like bringing back the 80s. And I mean, it's all dark subject matter.
Yeah.
It's not meant for little kids. That's for sure. That's one thing I noticed is like, it was almost like the kids that are in the show shouldn't be allowed to watch the show that they're in. At least that's the way I felt with it. I'm like, man, but anyway, it's kind of scary.
But we did not blaze through all the episodes. You originally said we blazed through all the episodes, and you went on a tangent.
Well, no, because the remainder of the season 4 starts in July.
Yeah, so we haven't blazed through.
We have blazed. Okay, let's go ahead and be specific.
Mm-hmm.
We have blazed through all the season 4 episodes that are available.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was still right. Oh yeah, don't shake your head. No,
people are literal.
You're literal,
and people will pull snippets and only focus
and I will
on that.
fight them in the parking lot, front yard. And it'll be sad and pathetic. Well, because at the end of all this, I could say, why would you beat up a disabled American veteran?
What the heck is wrong with you?
Hunger pains, man.
You were pointing out all these references, and I was getting a lot of them too. And then I was like, oh, was that really in the 80s? Because they made a couple of like X-Men type references, and I'm like, I don't remember that until the 90s because I was like 10 in the 90s.
Yeah, no, they were in the 80s too.
So, but
X-Men have been around for a while.
There's one I haven't seen in these, and you brought it up, the whole white socks thing.
Yeah.
What was that from?
I don't remember.
It was like some.
I told you I didn't remember then.
Yeah, it was some movie, and I was like,
okay, so it could have been like an Outsiders reference the Outsiders were, I think it was in the 50s, where you had the Sox, which is the social people that were like social people, like, the popular people, and somebody else. And the Sox used to wear their socks in their back pocket or something like that. Anyway, I don't remember. I don't know. See, that'd be weird because that movie came out like in the 80s, Outsiders, but it was referencing the 50s. So, So anyway, to move back into Stranger Things, a couple different things. If you haven't seen it, you should probably watch it, especially if you like paranormal stuff and if you like conspiracy theories, and you don't mind watching a bunch of punk kids running around doing things. It's not bad. What?
Yeah, I agree.
But we thought it would be fun to kind of talk about some of the 80s pop culture references that are sort of hidden in Stranger Things Season 4. And they're kind of hidden because the show is supposed to take place in the 80s. And they go through some trials and tribulations. So we're not going to do any spoilers because I don't want to, and we don't have enough time, right? Right.
Okay.
All right. So they do reference Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why are you sitting there? You're like, what? As we're both sitting here just like coughing and stuff.
I'm still sick, y'all.
So anyway, nobody cares. Nobody gives a crap unless it's like monkeypox. So, what?
Okay.
Well, I mean, can you imagine putting that on a note? I couldn't go to school today because I had monkeypox.
No.
If you did that like in the if you did that in the 80s, they'd be like, get out of here, man. Go to the principal's office. You're a liar, right? Okay, so they did bring up Nightmare on Elm Street, which is pretty cool. And these shows are basically created by the Duffer Brothers, and they've kind of gone through and they've tried to add. Okay, so this series basically has tried to add every conspiracy, every like horror film, every reference they could as an homage to all of them. They just wanted to get everything in there.
Yeah.
And I think, especially with season 4, it really sort of came clear to me. It's like, this is what they've been trying to do from the start. Get every single one of these cool references in there that it could to make everybody happy. And I honestly think that if the Stranger Things series 1 through 4 was actually done by a different like production company other than Netflix, they wouldn't have been allowed to do that. Somebody, well, I think you guys are taking a little too far, and blah, 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 I think Netflix was just like, just do it, man.
Similarly, okay, so American Horror Story usually grasps onto a genre or a theme for each of their seasons.
Yes.
And they got major flack like maybe 2 years ago about it either being played out or that they couldn't make fans happy. They'd go one way, people would get mad at that. They'd go the other way, they'd get mad at that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm here to enjoy the show. Yes, it's going to be outrageous when it tries to encompass certain themes. But, I mean, if you're a fan of the first 2 seasons, it's what you expect with
Yeah, and every season can't be a hit.
Yeah.
You know, like you may not, like the first season I seen was actually not even the first season. It was like the second season or whatever with the whole. And I thought it was great. It was a little weird, and it was off-putting in a nice way.
That's American. American Horror Story's thing is it has to be off-putting.
Yeah,
it has to take that theme or that trope and make it no longer acceptable. Bring it back into being creepy and unnerving.
Yeah, it's cringy, not in like an embarrassment, like that guy's. It's not like that. So I think the Duffer Brothers, being and having Netflix.
And theirs seems to be mostly nostalgia, like grabbing the essence of the nostalgia.
And the first season blew up, so I think after that, Netflix, if they had any kind of reservation, they're like, just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Because they need to, because Netflix needs to, they need to do better. But, so they referenced, like, Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger, and they also referenced The Silence of the Lambs, which I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. They also did, kind of their version of Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of like, it wasn't a reference to Game of Thrones, but just that episode was kind of the way it was set up, was to make it sort of look like their own little Game of Thrones homage, which I know is not really from the.
However, 80s, there was a Game of Thrones actor. So, so that was kind of cool.
They kind of stuck it in there.
Yeah, because he does have that, and he carries the same, you don't know his whole past vibe.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then Star Wars.
Or gray character vibe, I should say.
Yeah.
Now the It stuff,
Carrie,
Yeah, it took me a moment to really read into that. The Star Wars, if you're a Star Wars person, Han says, "Never tell me the odds." So, yeah.
Yeah. Hellraiser, War Games, Amityville Horror, X-Men. Yeah, it was good. I like it. So anyway, the whole point of Stranger Things season 4 was that we're putting in there is that you can watch it. And a lot of people don't know this. I shouldn't say a lot of people don't know this, but it's entirely possible that you don't know that the original name of this series was going to be called what? Montauk.
Really?
Yeah. And Montauk is about a place where the government was experimenting on children to try to bring forth their powers, their telekinesis, their mental powers, right? And they were doing that because of the Cold War, and allegedly one of the stories of Montauk and one of the reasons why it got shut down, because the idea of stealing kids off the street and doing experiments on them was bad enough, and there was lots of psychedelic drugs and stuff, but was that somehow or another a portal got opened and something stepped through. It was supposed to be some kind of a weird, crazy, invisible monster. Because I heard this on like Coast to Coast AM a long time ago, and basically took out like half the base.
And during that, a patient who was being trained at Montauk escaped.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Which kind of, and if you watch the first season of Stranger Things, you can kind of see where that's going with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of conspiracy references in there that maybe if you're not, into the whole 80s thing, that make it worth watching. Montauk was one of them. Secret desert bases, underground facilities.
You know what I noticed, though? As far as, like, modern people talking about Montauk, it isn't very common. And considering everything that happened to our Facebook and social media in 2020, I noticed that was another thing. People during that time stopped talking about Montauk, which I just think is really unusual. Well,
I mean, if you really kind of dig into it, a lot of people stopped talking about military stuff in general and the government and all that sort of secret society, whole government stealing, all of that stuff sort of went away because, hey, your stuff was getting taken away.
Yeah.
I mean, all the social media platforms like YouTube and Facebook and all that stuff really ratcheted it down to where if you started mentioning the C word, you wouldn't get any reach, you would be shadow banned, and then eventually they would just say, false news or whatever, and take your stuff away. And the funny thing about all that stuff is, and we talked about that in general, and when this started coming around with the with the older non-monkeypox virus, and a lot of what has been said by a lot of people has been proven to be correct.
Yeah.
But, hey, you got to lose all your stuff. So, anyway, Stranger Things Season 4. I thought it was pretty interesting. And they had a lot of 80s references, and the story is pretty good. And this one sort of picks up. They become slightly older because of the virus kind of when everybody was in lockdown, they didn't film. Right? Mm-hmm. But in this particular series, they also mentioned, like we said before, with War Games, which was in 1983, which was great. You know, they brought up some of the Beach Boys stuff. You had Fast Times at Ridgemont High as a reference in the new series, which is pretty obvious when you watch it. You know, and there was a song, Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush.
Yeah, I forgot how much I liked that song.
Yeah, everybody liked that song, but it didn't really get as much play because there was much better music on at the time, right? I'm serious. I lived it, right? But that song is going up the charts.
Yeah.
Like, it's entirely possible that Kate Bush will have, like, a number one hit from 1985 right back up to the top again.
Well, like, because I tried to find research on it, because I remember there was something very unique about that song. Like, it got a peak in interest, like, in the 90s. To the
Probably
point where
in reference of a serial killer song.
Movie, because of that spike, it ended up getting a new music video, you know?
Yeah.
And I was digging around for that, and I was like, I can't seem to find it. But there was something about that song in the early 90s that brought it back to the charts. So if it comes back again, you know, a second time, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, she was kind of gothy back then before you would call it gothy.
Yeah, I noticed that. There's like, you can tell, like, the evolution of cultural look and fashion look by things that define the 80s, you know?
You mean like Sushi and the Vansies?
Yeah. Well, and just like...
And other stuff?
Yeah, and like the fashion that's in Stranger Things. You look at some of it, you're like, oh, that's definitely early 90s, or early 80s. Oh, that's late 80s.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I just saw a 20-year-old in the grocery store with that same haircut, unironically, today, you know?
Yeah. It's a lot of good stuff. And maybe that's why I like it, because this is hearkening back to a time we didn't have to worry about a lot of the bullshit we have to worry about now.
True.
So, and you know, yeah, I don't know. I was going to say something my doctor said to me today. He said, "Hey, you're getting older. You're going to have to keep pushing that rock up the hill. It's all uphill from now." And it's like, yeah.
Great.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I don't know. So I thought it was pretty interesting. We kind of stuck it in there, and it is trending. And if you haven't seen it, and you're like, I don't want to watch that because blah, 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 you know, kind of like I was sort of poo-pooing it in the beginning, or if you've been one of those holdouts, you know, if you're one of those people who are like, I'm not watching Game of Thrones because everybody likes it, it's okay, man. You know, you can watch Stranger Things and wear Crocs, and nobody's going to give a crap. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, I still won't watch Breaking Bad.
We watched, the first 2 episodes, and it was just like...
I tried to give it a shot because, you know, I had an experience where I went into New Mexico, and everybody just like that was in my face the whole time. You got to do it. You got to do it. I'm like, no. I probably should. I think enough time has passed. So, but what I did to those people that kept pushing on me is tell them, Longmire, you got to watch Longmire. It's a Western show set in modern times, and it's filmed all around the places that you see every day.
Oh.
And are tired of because you've lived here all your life.
Which, if you pay attention in Stranger Things 4, there's some scenes where they are fleeing authorities or they're going to a secret base. A lot of those were literally filmed where I used to go rock hounding.
Literally.
Seriously, there's this one scene with some power lines, and I'm like... That is exactly 4 minutes from my old house, you know? Or I use that particular power line as a marker because I knew, okay, I can find fossils on this side of the power lines, and on the other side I can find petrified wood, you know? Yeah,
it's pretty cool. And they also had some stuff in there mentioning like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And the Hellfire Club and all that junk. So anyway, I thought it was pretty cool, so you should watch it and check it out. It's pretty good. Overall, and what else are you going to do? I'm sure there's better stuff to watch, but, you know, why not? Give it a shot. You know what I mean? That's all I got to say about that. All right. So anyway, let's do this.
Okay.
So our last podcast episode, and if you're listening and you're 20 minutes in with us, we played a song. And that song is called Flight of the Mothman by Post Traumatic, not post-traumatic, like I don't know what I was thinking of. Anyway, and so we played it, and it instantly seemed to be flagged for copyright and all that stuff. And even though we had permission, it became a thing. And Tony, basically who made the song in the band, went through and did a lot of work to make sure that it was okay.
Okay.
Because copyright can be, it's a thing. And so we really appreciate that. And we're going to play this song again because, hey, screw you, YouTube, and all you guys trying to like, oh, it's copyright. Not even your song to copyright. Claim a person's song. So I think what we're going to do is take a quick break, and we're going to play Flight of the Mothman for you guys so that you can actually hear it this time. All right. What do you think about that? You have any questions? All right, here we go. There you go.
Cool.
That was a high energy banger. Fly the Mothman from Post Traumatic. Whoa. What's going on there? I almost played another song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Can't do that. Because then they'd have reason to blast us for copyright. Like, and they'd be like, just got him. That's what I feel like. Okay, so anyway, we thought it was pretty cool, and we do have links to Fly to the Mothman on YouTube and on Spotify.
Yeah.
So you should check out Post Traumatic. So, and they're opening up for Metal Mariachi.
That's
pretty funny. It's like, one of our patrons and good friend of the show, Dave, pointed out Metal Mariachi one time. I thought it was pretty interesting. So speaking of flaps, let's talk about the Wytheville UFO flap.
Okay.
But before we do that, let's talk about the Wytheville UFO Fest, as in festival.
Okay.
It's happening. right?
Yeah.
June 11th, 2022, in Wytheville, Virginia, at the Wytheville Meeting Rooms, which is 333 Community Boulevard in Wytheville. There's going to be the UFO Fest.
Oh, I've been telling everybody June 10th. My bad.
Well, it's good to get there early.
So June 11th, everybody.
Yep, June 11th, everybody.
Yep.
And this is marking the 35th anniversary of the mysterious Wytheville UFO wave, or flap. Right? Mm-hmm. So you should go check it out. As far as what's going on, it's supposed to be happening in 7 days, 10 hours, 20 minutes, and 7 seconds.
Okay.
They have a really stressful sort of countdown timer on their page. I'm like, oh, no. You know, because we're going to go there, and we're going to set up our little table, and we're going to talk to people about UFOs and Bigfoots and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and you can go too. So if you're in the area, you should go. I mean, why not? It's a UFO fest, man. It's going to be good, right?
Yeah.
As far as who's going to be there and speakers and stuff like that, there's a couple. You got Danny Gordon. I just clicked out of it. Paul Dellinger. And, okay, so Danny Gordon's a journalist and author. He's a UFO author and speaker. You got Dave Spinks is going to be there. Paul Dellinger is going to be there. Sean Coates is going to be there. He's a filmmaker. Ron Lantham and Joe Perdue are going to be there from Wild and Weird. We know those guys.
Yeah.
Be sure to make fun of them. You know, so it's going to be good. So you should go. You should check it out. I don't know. Excuse me. I think it's free.
Is it?
I don't know. See, we're going as vendors, so, you know, to basically set up shop and talk about stuff. So a lot of times I don't really pay attention to cost, you know, because it's different when you're a vendor. So either way, it's going to be worth going to.
All right.
So we do have a link to the page. You can kind of go check it out and see who those people are and read up on them and see what they bring to the table. And you should make plans. So if you're in the area, for sure, go. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of cool vendors there. And the cool thing about the vendors that's going to be there, a lot of the vendors are people that do stuff like podcasts and research and films and stuff. So you're going to see people that are exciting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. We might sponsor this. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's happening pretty soon. But yeah. All right. So anyway, let's talk about the Wytheville UFO thing. The flap, the fest.
Sure.
The wave, the flippity flappity. So a long time ago, 35 years ago, almost in 7 days.
Okay, we just got done with Stranger Things 4, and that seems to be in 1985.
Yes.
This happened, what, in the 87 or?
Yeah. Well, okay, so it happened over about a 3-year period, right? So in the 80s, okay, from 1987, here's what it says. From October 7th, 1987 to December 1990.
Oh, wow.
So that's a little bit, it's about on the same time frame, really, almost.
Yeah.
So, oh, wait a minute. Is Danny Gordon the reporter who actually reported on this?
Maybe.
From the Wytheville UFO Fest? He's going to be there, right?
Yeah.
So, is he the actual reporter who started this whole thing?
Maybe. Yeah.
Let's see. He is. I'll be honest, I did not recognize him because 40 years had passed. Well, I'm allowed, man. So yeah, he actually reported this whole thing. Okay, so because I'm looking at him like that guy looks familiar, and it sounded they had the same sort of story because it's the same dude. That's very nice because that guy's been on all sorts of stuff. You know, he's been like Men in Black, Unsolved Mysteries, Hard Copy.
Okay.
So, yeah, so he's got some info out there on the Wytheville UFO thing. The flap.
Yeah.
I have so many tabs open, I can't even keep it straight right now. It's nutty, man. And you're just like, yeah, okay, great. You're not even doing
Well,
anything.
I thought you were going to proceed to talk about
Well, I
this.
was. Okay, so reporter Danny Gordon, basically in 1987, right? He checked in with the local sheriff in Wytheville, Virginia, and was shocked to learn that 3 Wytheville police officers had claimed to see a UFO. You can remember back in the 80s, if you were seeing UFOs and stuff like that, and you were like a pilot or somebody important, you know,
Yeah.
not saying that cops aren't important, but you know what I mean. You didn't say.
Yeah.
You're like, you know, because it's just one of those things. You didn't really want to lose your credibility, especially in a position where, you know, you have to interact with the public and in some ways protect the public. Like a pilot's job is to make sure that he carries all the souls, right?
Well, the same attitude could be taken towards the cops. If a cop openly said he saw a UFO, the people in the community probably won't respect him or take him seriously.
Kind of what I was, So, they kind of reported it's like the sighting was more of kind of like a joke type story because he didn't really want to believe it, right?
Yeah, and if you're an everyday person, I remember the overall attitude back then in that particular point of the 80s was you're on drugs.
Yeah.
You know? So that's to have 3 cops from the same precinct say they saw something. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and Danny was a radio reporter. So he was having people call in.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically kind of went as sort of a joke thing because he didn't really believe it. And then, but Danny's story sparked an unprecedented listener reaction as UFO sightings poured into the radio station.
Wow. Okay.
So basically on October 7th, he made a night where everybody would call into the station and report their sightings. You know, like one woman reported that the UFO was huge and long, had several blinking lights, made no noise. One guy reported that it was egg-shaped. You know, another woman said it was red and green and white and flashing lights. But see, you know, Danny believed that there was an explanation for it all, and that it's military, like basically experimental aircraft.
Yeah.
From the military. But of course, the military denied it because, of course, right? And then some people were like, well, then maybe it's planes that are refueling. And so Danny started doing his due diligence where he contacted the Pentagon and learned that planes were not allowed to refuel that low in the sky. Because you have to have some altitude in case things go wrong. Where, you know.
Yeah.
And on October 21st, Danny and a friend, Roger Hall, basically drove to the south, an area basically south of Wytheville, where they had most of the sightings that were reported, and they were unable to see anything. But while they were driving back, he looked to the left, and he actually saw an unusual object on the horizon. So they parked the car, and they got out and looked at it, and noticed a large craft flying by. It was dome-shaped. Had a strobe light on top, and basically Danny saw a red ball that kind of went towards the craft, docked with it, and then the craft flew up in the sky.
Oh.
Kind of like a mothership situation, right?
Yeah.
The two were shocked, but angered that they were unable to get any pictures of it.
Yeah.
I can relate. You're like, oh, crap, I should have had my camera. But see, they weren't thinking they were going to see anything. They went to the area, they scoped it out, they didn't see anything. On the way back, something happened, and they just weren't ready for it.
And it's the 80s, so setting up a camera takes more than, you know, opening your phone.
Yeah, well, they're probably not using video cameras. Maybe, because stuff was inordinately, it was expensive.
Yeah, that too.
So they basically parked the car and got out, and they looked at it, and they noticed that large craft was flying by with the dome light and the strobe light on top and the little red ball that went up and docked with it.
Yeah.
So the next night, they went out to take pictures of the craft. And basically a press conference was made the next day. Now, you can read all this on unsolvedmysteries.fandom.com.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it goes on into saying anonymous phone calls, CIA and federal government, people interested in the whole thing. And then, wow.
He was told to not investigate the sightings because they had to do with the government.
Yeah.
After one press conference, he got his house broken into. Oddly, nothing was stolen. But he believed that somebody had broken his house to actually take the UFO pictures because they started trying to take pictures, right?
Yeah.
Because the next night they went out and started taking, they went out again to try to take pictures of the craft, and they were able to.
Yeah.
So whatever it was still operating in the area type thing, and they were able to take some more pictures.
Oh, man. I provided a link with more information about just how small Wyethville is, and it actually has all that info right here at the bottom.
Yeah.
But it's a small community, and for such a small community and for Danny to continue to have all these other things follow up.
Well, I mean, think about this. By the end of December, they had over 1,500 UFO sightings.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's not like 10 or what. I mean, that's 1,500 reported.
1,500 when the population of Wyethville is 8,000. That's literally your uncle, your friend has seen a UFO.
It's like everybody. You know, and everybody kind of started saying the same things. They didn't make any noise. So whether it was a helicopter or an airplane, right, didn't make any noise. Mm-hmm. One lady, Rita Marie Vaught, claimed that she saw a UFO behind a ridge half a mile from her house, and that it was a circle object in the sky, had strange lights, right? And so it just goes on with these reports about the red light in the middle, large object. So Danny called and talked to the Pentagon, right? Got a hold of the defense branch, and they claim that the government confirms that UFOs exist, but they don't pose a threat to Wythe County. So, which is kind of funny because there is some tie into this, but remember the drone sightings somewhere over like Utah and Colorado?
It was Colorado.
It was also part of Utah because Dugway Proving Ground.
Yeah.
And there's lots of sightings, and people just leave it alone. The local government's like, we don't know what it is. You know, the government's like, we don't know what it is, but local police just leave it alone.
Yeah.
So, March 19th, 1988, Danny was packing for a broadcasters conference in Virginia Beach, which is where we're from. I guess where we kind of grew up. When he received a call from a retired military intelligence officer, and the officer told him to record a conversation and that he wanted to be taped to show that he warned Danny. Guy's like, put this on tape because I'm warning you. I want it to be evident. So the man claimed that his son died of leukemia because of his UFO research, and he also claimed that the same might happen to Danny because the government did not like his research either.
Oh.
And so the man believed that they wanted to quiet him either through chemical warfare or his children. So now we're getting into some threats.
Yeah.
You know, so he's done enough reporting on this. He's got enough witnesses. He started, he's asking the questions. He's poking the bear. And this guy's like, yo, man, better watch out.
Yeah.
They're going to chemically poison you, right? Or your kids, or give you a disease. And so the guy that called Danny's like, it basically kind of put it out there that he believed that they wanted to quiet him, right? Either through the chemical warfare or his children. And this thing says, interestingly, that same week there was a hepatitis epidemic in Virginia Beach. And Danny claimed that he would have, Danny claimed that he would have believed the caller had he come down with hepatitis, but both he and his children were safe.
Wait a second.
So
hepatitis?
he was saying, hey, I would totally believe where this guy's coming from if I got hepatitis because there's, what they were saying. With the threats, chemical or having something happen to you or your children. But he didn't. So like a month later, 2 visitors came to his house, and he was interviewed by one of them for like 45 minutes, and the other one was taking pictures throughout the house. And they told Danny that they would send him the newspaper article, but he didn't receive it. And when he didn't receive it, he called the newspaper, and they said, hey, man, these men don't work for us at all. I don't know who they are. So he had 2 people come to do an article on him and basically interview him where they were in a house, right?
Yeah.
And one guy's taking pictures of his house. And so when he calls, hey, he's not in the newspaper and didn't hear didn't see anything about the article. When he called him, they're like, oh, nobody works here. We don't know who that is.
Oh.
So you just let 2 dudes in your house, man, to take pictures of all your stuff. And it just goes, man, I don't know. I mean, the 80s were a different time, and the 90s and stuff like that. But, would you do that now? Hell no, man. You'd be like, let's go to Waffle House, and or somewhere like that, and you can interview us there. Nobody ever come. No, not allowed.
Yeah.
So a few weeks later, he went to catalog and organize his UFO photos, and when he went through the negatives, he found that the negatives from a shopping mall where some of the reports came from and his pictures came from were missing.
Oh.
Yep. And he also realized that there may have been something in those photographs that he was not seeing. So he took them to others to look at, but they couldn't discover why someone would want them. So he has some pictures taken, and they were seemingly of unimportance, but somebody took them. So that's kind of odd, right? So this whole thing is like X-Files, like an X-Files episode.
It is very X-Files, and that's probably why Unsolved Mysteries did an episode on it.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about these after effects, the things that follow a typical UFO incident, like the investigation, the threats, all that stuff. And then, somebody larger, somewhat untouchable, Unsolved Mysteries focuses on it. And that's it. But then in 2012, there was a filmmaker who was going to start working on a documentary about it. And then that stalled.
Yeah.
And then it was supposed to start back up again in 2018. I don't see any updates.
Yeah, I don't know. Because, I mean, this affected him physically as well. He, collapsed.
Yeah.
You're from all the UFO stress because he had severe exhaustion. And basically, Danny was cautioned that continued UFO research could jeopardize his health. And he hasn't had a UFO sighting since December of 1990. And he doesn't plan to do any more with UFO research. So the phenomenon apparently ended in Wytheville as the sightings ended. But they've never had any explanation for the UFOs. So that's really about, man, I hate to keep coughing. It's like I don't have a cough button, but.
I don't know. It makes me wonder, though, when there's such a significant uptick in sightings, and it's not something that can be explained away like the Goodyear blimp out near Raleigh or Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
When there's such a significant increase and then nothing, the sci-fi part of me is like, did something happen? Did they do something? Did they, I don't know, abduct some people, or did something other significant thing? Like, did they reach out to people? But then I'm also like, did activity pick up someplace else? Like, once they visit or once those sightings occur, does
I don't know.
Else happen
Because one of the things that, okay, so when he took his pictures at the mall, evidently a large object broke into 4 smaller objects. And he took those pictures, and those are the ones that were taken away, right? And some of the shape changes, like from teardrop shape to round ball and disc, and then egg, are some of the stuff that we're seeing now.
Yeah. On
some of these shows, we're like, look at this in the sky. What could it be? And you see this breaking apart and doing all this stuff. So if these are experimental military craft, maybe the beginnings of the drone sort of technology that we're seeing with like Able Wingman and the drone AIs where you have a mothership and all that stuff. I could see where they would threaten him, and I could see where it would become a thing, because this would be a national security military type secret. Mm-hmm. So what if that's what he came across, and that's what he's seen, that's what he started documenting, that's what the other people seen.
But then,
and then they sort of finished doing whatever it is they were doing, whatever testing or whatever they were doing, flying around, and then went somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, typically with something like this, and it can span a couple of days or even a couple of years, a similar phenomenon happens elsewhere in the United States or even elsewhere in the world, where it's the same type of sighting. Like we were talking about a while back, how Western North Carolina had the cigar-shaped UFO sightings in like the 40s and 50s.
I think it was like 57 or something.
Yeah, like that. But then, like maybe later on that year, the cigar shapes were being sighted in places like California. I think it was like Northern California or something like that.
Well, I mean, you can easily leave like Wytheville and just basically shoot across the country to Roswell or anywhere in between.
And I was thinking like the round descriptions reminds me of stuff I've heard from like people who live in like Texas and stuff like that, Or
go to Wright-Patterson.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting. There was a lot of sightings that occurred and a lot of documentation. And so I guess that if you're going to define a flap by the number of sightings from different people, different places over a duration of time, and you hit like 1,500 of them, I'm pretty sure I think that would qualify.
Yeah.
As, something. Flap. Kind of crazy. So, with this festival coming up, and he's going to be there.
Cool.
It might be interesting to ask him a question or two.
All right.
You know what I mean? It's like, what were you thinking? Because who knows why he started documenting this to begin with? Because he's a radio reporter. This is news.
Yeah.
It's weird news for sure. So I think it's kind of neat. So yeah, he should be there. What are you laughing at? Are you cheesing on something?
It's just a thought. as we've done this podcast and we do paranormal and UFO events, we've done them for a few years now, I think that if we're going to speak to another UFO experiencer, we're going to lose another piece of technology critical to us doing events.
What do you mean?
So,
right? Have you? Okay, you were terrible at pantomime. So we're gonna mute the microphones for 2 seconds, just because I'm super curious now. Okay, ready to go. Okay, that is kind of funny. Well, it's been a couple of years. We could probably share that story.
yeah.
Okay, so we don't know if you remember this or not, but we've done this for a while. And we do podcast episodes, and we do these events.
I don't want to name
places.
names, though.
I'm not going to say Travis Walton borrowed our square reader, our card reader thingy. He gave it back.
His table did.
Well, okay, so we've seen Travis Walton and talked to Mr. Walton, I don't know, 5 or 6 times in 1 year.
Oh, in total, we saw him 3 times in 1 year, and then we saw him 4 times in 1 year.
It's been more than that.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was kind of funny because he flew in to do a thing, and we were at that thing, and he comes, he sees us, and he recognizes us. He's like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" We're like, "Yeah, doing pretty good. How are you doing?" He's like, "Well, doing all right." And he goes, "Hey, I flew out here, and I don't have my doodad, my money thing." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "That thing you guys use to swipe cards." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I got one right here." He's like, "Do you think I could borrow that?" And lucky for him, we had more than one thing. Yeah. So we let him borrow it. And I thought it was kind of funny because I actually at one time said, "You should sign this," but I didn't. And then somebody at one of the events decided, because they thought they were slick. They're like, "I'm going to go ahead and steal this guy's swiper. And I'm going to put it in my pocket."
But have you noticed that?
And I watched him put it in his pocket. And I got a little distracted because his dirty kids, his evil kids were over there rooting around with your expensive stuff. And I, being ever polite, said, "Get away from that." And then he walked off, and I've seen him in 3 different events. So when I see him again, because I will recognize his kids that he tries to use as a diversionary tactic.
Yeah.
And I'll say, "How's that reader working out for you?"
But don't you think it's weird, though, that every time we interview a UFO experiencer, that same event, something electronic or technology related to us gets destroyed or ends up gone? I mean, we interviewed Eric Mitchell, and he literally sat there and touched one of our recorders, and it stopped working.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't let Eric touch stuff like that. He just told you.
I know.
I can touch things, and they stop working. And you let him touch it. Because I had a conversation with Eric, and we talked about that too. He's like, "Yeah, I can do that kind of stuff." And I said, "Stay away from me." We thought it was funny, and we stepped back, and because I was showing him pictures and stuff of something. But yeah, Eric's a cool cat. And the funny thing is that Eric knows Travis. They know each other. There was a bacon incident with that, which I thought was super funny. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty funny. So yeah. I'm sure we'll see Travis again. Have we seen him this year? I don't think we have.
No, not this year. We saw him last year.
We've seen him a couple times last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe for the podcast we'll actually do an interview, like quick 30 seconds with Mr. Travis Walton. So he's a nice guy. I like him. So that's pretty nice. So there you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, back into the podcast. Do you have anything?
I was going to try.
Because I'll be honest with you, I completely closed all my notes.
I was going to add some interesting stuff about Wytheville. We already have some stuff in the show notes that you can find on the earlier article about the UFO encounters, like the fact that Wytheville's population is barely over 8,000, and that's in a 2010 census. So back then in the 80s, it was even lower. It's a quiet town that pretty much I hadn't heard of till last year. I had to look up things to do, and I found out, it's got like multiple museums. It's got some interesting history to it, but I had never heard of it till now. There's an Octagon House out there, and it's a museum. There's a historic shot tower, Yeah. And
What's a shot tower?
overlooking the New River, shot tower was built more than 200 years ago to make ammunition for the firearms of the early settlers.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Lead from the nearby Austinville mines was melted into a kettle atop a 75-foot tower and then poured through a sieve, falling through the tower, an additional 75-foot shaft, and then into a kettle of water. And I guess that's how they made the bullets or ammunition.
Just call them rounds.
Rounds.
Because I think that would actually give them the round shape.
Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That tower is opened on scheduled days in the summer.
Well, very nice.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I kind of wish they would have finished that documentary about the Wytheville UFO flap.
I know.
Or wave. Yeah. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So
I do like they're like trying to, you know, some of the explanations were like, oh, it's a B-2 bomber refueling. Like,
apparently there was a short movie in 2019 about the Octagon Mansion in Wytheville, Virginia. A Haunting at the Octagon Mansion.
Okay, so when we talked to dude who said come down and come investigate the Octagon.
He was talking about Kentucky, though.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, if we've actually asked this question before amongst ourselves, how many like haunted Octagon places are there?
It's like it's all of them. It
Yeah.
really is.
We know of 3, and evidently they're all 3 haunted.
Yeah. So,
Allegedly.
I mean, I remember reading a book when I was a kid called Octagon Magic, and it was about a girl who had to live with an extended relative because her parents or somebody passed away, and the Octagon house they lived in was haunted. Yeah, and I'm like, yeah.
That's pretty weird.
I guess it comes with the shape. Octagon, haunted. So, yeah.
Maybe. Well, you know what else is weird? New celebrity shows that are coming on. Paranormal type celebrity shows.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we talked about Stranger Things, right? Okay, if you don't know, Jack Osborne, Ozzy Osbourne's little kid. What?
He's not a little kid.
Okay, so the Osborne, The Osbournes was a show that was around, 2008 or 12 or whatever it was. I don't know. But he was a kid. Now he's not. But he's all into the paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
And since he's Hollywood, because his parents are famous and he eventually got famous, doing this sort of thing, he knows a lot of people. Like Ben Hansen, who he knows a lot of people that make paranormal shows. The Staffords, I think he knows Josh Gates, all that stuff. Like Josh Gates is the vanilla Indiana Jones. So he is, man. He's like the PG Indiana Jones. Anyway, so he knows a lot of people and he does a lot of investigations. He does like the portals to hell. The Fright Brothers, so he's involved in a lot of this stuff, and has been doing it for quite a while. And he's going to have a show where he runs around with Jason Mewes from Clerks. You know who Jason Mewes is?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was not the silent fat guy.
It's Jay.
Right. I was getting to this. He just wrecked it. Okay, so whatever, man. He's Jay from Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they all know each other, which I thought was pretty funny. But the fact that they're going to run around and do a show. So the show is going to be Jack Osborne and Jason Mewes, Jay and Silent Bob and Clerks and all that stuff. They're going to go on a wild backcountry hunt for the legendary cryptid known as Bigfoots.
Okay.
I'm slightly interested by this. Well, I mean, you're not, but I mean, think about it.
I mean,
it's Bigfoot. It's called Jack Osborne's Night of Terror, Bigfoot. Now, there's not going to be any terror type stuff.
Yeah.
But the shows I've seen where he's been in there and doing the research and investigation, it's kind of worth a watch. Because he's been doing this paranormal stuff, according to what I'm reading here, most of his life. And I do know that from seeing some different things, he does own property, so maybe he's all into it now because he owns property, and that sort of has led him into, let's look deeper into Bigfoot.
And he's said that on that Osborne's Want to Believe. He's like, I'm so excited, I can't wait to do this on my property,
Because he has a show with his mom and dad where they review paranormal clips, because the reaction clips that people see, and a lot of the shows that people are watching are a reaction show.
Yeah.
Sort of interface there with people from like Monsters Among Us and things like that.
Genius, because it's basically what most people do is sit there and show their friends or family clips of things that they found and see their reaction.
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely popular.
I mean,
the reaction videos are wildly popular.
Yeah.
And they're like, watch as you see this crawl out of the ditch. And people going, oh my God, that kind of thing, right? And so he does it with his parents. And so now he's going to be doing this, and they're going to run around and do stuff in the woods. And you don't know if something's real or not until you've made an attempt to find it. That's the crux of our mission. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit nervous. The area we have to cover is immense with very dangerous animals like grizzly bears and mountain lions, right? And there's no telling what'll come stumbling out of the woods. Hopefully, it's Jay and me in one piece.
Okay.
So where is he going? I don't know. According to this, he's somewhere called the Priest Lake region, which is supposed to be a hotbed of reported Bigfoot activity. And they're going to go out there trekking deep into the remote Priest Lake region. Is that anywhere close to where finding Expedition Bigfoot is? Kind of.
So
same continent. Throw me a bone here.
Expedition Bigfoot's now in California, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is kind of close to one of their other expeditions because it looks like it is on the border of Idaho. Priest Lake is a lake in Idaho. The northernmost portion of the Idaho Panhandle, 80 miles northeast of Spokane. So
it's up there.
With the northern end of the lake extending to within 15 miles of the Canadian-U.S. border. So...
I wonder if that's where he has property.
I'm trying to get the map to load because I think it's in that mysterious territory where weird things happen, like disappearances and... Yeah.
Well, it might. It may be. Who knows? But I think it's pretty interesting they're going to be going out and doing it. Now, unfortunately, it's one of these Discovery Plus things where you have to subscribe, to see it. But eventually, I'm sure it'll make its way on regular TV. And I do see that they also have another one planned, like Jack Osborne's Night of Terror, UFOs. So if he's going after all these things, who knows? Will he find anything? I don't know. Is it going to be interesting to watch? Hopefully, but probably not. Will be anything new added to the idea of doing the research? Because as much as these shows, I think, can lack some integrity, they bring more eyes to the field. And hopefully, the more eyes, more people. I think that they bring some of this information out there, and it makes it more acceptable, and more people will do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what's needed because you're never going to be able to. You got to have people looking into this sort of thing. So if you want Bigfoot to be seen, like with good footage and good evidence to the point where people can say without a shadow of a doubt, or at least 90% chance that yes, there is something out there. You got to have people out there actively looking and being able to embrace new ideas and using new technology. And not caring about what people are like, I've been researching Bigfoot for 30 years, and that's not how you do any of it. Because I got to be honest with you, I'm in that age group now where I can be crusty about it. That is absolutely the wrong attitude to have. It is. Because you're going to poo-poo somebody who's out there trying and learning when you should be fostering and mentoring. Well, we wouldn't do it this way because this. It's like, really, man, at the end of the day, it's still not proven. So who says your way of doing things is more correct than somebody's like, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to take a bunch of bananas or a hot dog on a stick and I'm going to capture Bigfoot.
Oh.
I mean, come on. And I think a lot of people are really serious about it to the point where it becomes, they're so locked in their methods of doing things that they instantly want to trash somebody who tries something different. Or basically saying, well, you're not a real researcher because you don't do this full time, that sort of a thing. And honestly, that attitude needs to go away. We see it a lot. And we also see where people are like, well, hey, you're out there doing your research and all that stuff. And you're working a way to get paid to do it so you can support the endeavor. And I don't like that. You should be doing this out of kindness of your heart.
It speaks to something really...
And those people that complain like that are the ones that I see on my YouTube channel where it's like, I had ads playing on your YouTube video. You should turn all the ads off. It's It's like, you should shut the hell up.
It speaks to me with the whole, the people who are in the industry and they expect you to grovel and everything to be out of pocket and for you to live this certain way in pursuit of truth and knowledge. It's very reminiscent, though, to the psychological double standard of starving artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you feel, as the artist, you feel compelled to share the art.
Well, what happens when you actually sell your art?
You also feel compelled to support yourself and make a living.
Yeah, you kind of want to eat.
On the other end of that, you have the audience of your art who expects it for free because it is quote unquote art. Yeah. So it's very similar to that, which makes you go, okay, so are paranormal investigators and Bigfoot researchers artists or content creators?
It depends.
Is there an expectation that the service or what they bring into the world should be free?
I'll tell you exactly what it is, because I like going back to like the YouTube videos and stuff. There's always somebody that says, I don't like ads, or you shouldn't do ads, or, why are you linking to Amazon? And it's like, okay, so you're a consumer. You expect to be able to consume the content for free. Mm-hmm. And you think that if somebody makes any kind of, augmenting income off of that sort of thing, that now you're disingenuous. Yeah. Like the only reason why you spent 3 hours making that video and put a link in there where you might get 10 cents off a click is because that's what you're doing. That's what you want to do. You want to get rich. And so you have that group, right? And it's like, you don't understand it, because the content creator's time is worth nothing to the content consumer. So now you have people that are in the same field or endeavor, right? You have the same like-minded, we'll call them content creators. And they're okay with it, creating content when nobody's getting ahead. But when somebody gets ahead or finds a way to make the ability for one content creator to do more and have the liquidity of money to be able to do something, then they start instantly crapping on that person who's making more. Because now they're cheating. They're getting ahead. Because
they've created a way to sustain future content.
Right.
And
the funny thing is that honestly, if you look at this and your endeavors and you're going out in the woods and you're researching and you're buying new gear and you're doing all that stuff, at the end of the day, you should be looking at it like it's a business.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and you're not getting ahead, and you want to be angry at somebody who is and has treated it that way, that's on you.
Now, I've heard that, but I've also heard recently, no, you shouldn't approach it as a business. You should approach it as a scholar. And that's where I stop them dead, because scholars of even hard sciences and things that are not woo-woo and things like that, scholars apply for grants.
Yes.
Scholars get backers, investors, funding, scholarships. So even scholars of a science or an art or a concept, they receive some form of support to sustain their research.
So a lot of it's jealousy.
Yeah.
And I know this is a tangent conversation, but we've seen it.
Well, I mean,
and so when we see shows that come on TV, and they may not be like, oh, well, these shows are just blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, they're bringing more into it than the people that have been doing this for 35 years that want to crap on somebody who wants to go in the woods. Honestly.
Yeah.
And we've got people like that that are like, well, I've been doing this forever. It's like, I have no idea who you are. I have never seen you before. You may be super popular in your little neck of the woods, but at the end of the day, man, because we need more people to come into it, and we need people that are open to the idea of, hey, it's okay to do research. Let me offer you some suggestions.
That's helpful.
Instead of going, because everybody's a freaking expert and nobody can prove anything. It's true, but there are certain people who have other backgrounds that lend themselves to being able to do research. And we've talked about like Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum. He can look at footprints and figure out what's going on with it. If it's human, I mean, he's a professor, right? So anyway, we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but we do see that, we've been on the end of that too, where, oh, you guys, you're not really serious. And it's like, yeah, we're not. You want me to strap on a 65-pound backpack and go 45 miles into the woods? No. Even on my best day, when I was young and pliable, I would not want to do that. That's awful. Would you want to hike in the woods 65 miles in the middle of nowhere and do what? Get eaten by a freaking bear?
But
or get ticks?
If people
ticks
like
are terrible.
Alex Petikoff or even the Les Stroud, if they want to do that, good for them.
No, yeah.
You know?
I like it when they do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I'm trying to say is that's never been quite my thing, to go out in the middle of nowhere and do that sort of thing. I mean, I have to have certain concessions. I'm not sleeping on the ground, man. I'm not an animal, and it's never comfortable.
So basically, our level of seriousness is not that type of seriousness. So
yeah, I mean, okay. So I should have probably prefaced this a little better. We're serious about what we do. We've got 246 episodes. We never get so deep in the information we're putting out there to the level that somebody's been researching a singular subject for 10, 15, 20, 30 years has. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't have time in my life to devote that much to it, because there are other people who have been looking into the phenomena in general 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and they've come up with bupkis, nothing. And some of those people have done some amazing and groundbreaking work, and they've been rewarded for their work in a way to maybe possibly support themselves. But, I mean, I'm into it. We know a lot of stuff. We like to talk about it. But the idea of a lighthearted podcast, which is what we try to do, goes out the window when you get so hardcore into it that you just can't.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's funny, especially when you hear stuff like Bigfoot was spotted cruising through somebody's backyard on the way into the woods wearing a freaking dress.
Yeah.
Because somebody had been stealing women's clothes off the power lines. I mean, off the, not power, you would call them clotheslines.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out who it was. And somebody had spotted what looked to be like a Sasquatch cruising through the woods wearing a floral dress on backwards.
Okay.
That's funny to me.
Yeah.
But if you told it to somebody, they're like, what? Oh, okay, whatever. Here's the analogy real quick, and then I'll let it go. Mm-hmm. We have woodcuts and stuff that we have out there so people get little knickknacks when we do these things. And one of them is a Sasquatch with high heels.
Sassy Squatch.
Yeah, Sassy Squatch. I think it's funny. I've had an angry dude just spitting at me so mad about it. Just like, they don't wear high heels. He just venomous. And you know what I told him? Back up, man. Get away from my table. It's supposed to be funny, bro. Don't come at me all crazy. You shouldn't be doing that. And the dude had a country accent, so that's why I'm actually imitating a country accent.
Which is funny because, it's like, we can't have fun with Bigfoot.
You can have Bigfoot on a surfboard eating pizza. That's okay, but wearing high heels, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Or aliens being associated with, drug culture. Because when you look at...
Like Paul from...
Yeah. Or you go on Etsy now and you try to, find some cool alien stuff, and it's like, aliens really love weed, apparently.
I mean... They are, okay, so every depiction you see, they're either gray or green.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's just kind of one of those things. So, but yeah, we went on a little bit of a tangent. I don't even know what the question was. Did you ask me a question?
No.
All right. So I think we're going to take a second and take a look at the notes and see if we've missed anything, but I think you've had about enough of us with this particular podcast episode. Oh, wait. We didn't finish.
Yeah.
So we talked about Jack Osborne doing his thing. Guess who else is going to be coming up and doing a little podcast, doing a little paranormal type show on Discovery Plus?
Who?
Kesha.
Oh.
Do you know who Kesha is?
Yeah.
I don't.
She's a pop.
I'm not
diva,
a pop diva
artist person
guy.
Yes. So, hits like Take It Off and stuff like that. She's done a couple of dance tracks that I think I might have somewhere in my iTunes library or Apple Music library. But I guess Discovery Plus has her hosting a new reality series that follows her and other celebrity guests, along with experts in supernatural phenomenon, to explore mind-blowing haunted sites. Conjuring Kesha is reportedly the working title and will manifest 6-hour-long episodes next year, include in cinematic, hands-on paranormal fashion, according to the series' description. Huh. The 34-year-old pop star called the project a creepy bucket list opportunity for the paranormal enthusiast, who once claimed to have had sexy time with a ghost.
Huh. That's
all
a little
right.
odd.
Oh, yeah, she did that Supernatural single. Yeah, okay. I've had a couple of experiences with the supernatural, she said. I don't know his name. He was a ghost. I'm very open to it. There are so many weird topics on this record, from having sexy time with a ghost to getting hypnotized and going into past lives. And that's in regards to, I guess, an album she worked on. Yeah. She also launched a podcast last year, Kesha and the Creepies, which explores all things supernatural.
Everybody's doing a freaking podcast.
I know.
Us included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So over the course of my life, I've always been drawn to the supernatural and the spiritual realm. She said in a statement tied to the Conjuring Kesha announcement, making music I felt was a cosmic connection between my soul and something bigger than me that I couldn't explain. And you see statements like that a lot from like artists, like drawing artists, you know, and painters and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see it from like a musician.
Well, you know what's going to happen, right?
What?
People that are fans of her are going to start looking into stuff. And that's going to create a wave of people asking questions to people. You know, asking, let's just call it entry-level questions to people who've been doing this forever, and they're going to get, you know.
But this is a thing that is just joyful to me, is that these are going to be Kesha fans asking that grumpy Sasquatch guy, or asking like the die-hard paranormal investigator Kesha young people culture type questions, very like Gen Z type questions.
Well, Kesha's like 34, so they're probably not going to be too young. I mean, I don't know. I think it's great. The more people we can get looking at it, and if, you know, people can get into it at an early age, and, you know, because, hey, they're all good with the technologies. Yeah. Maybe we'll get some better freaking pictures. I mean, teenagers these days, youngsters these days, they can use phone. Yeah. They can take a picture. They know to tap to focus before they take that really blurry picture of Bigfoot.
I know.
So who knows? I thought it was pretty interesting. You had Jack Osborne, and then you got her, and there's a bunch of other shows, and there's been other singers and stuff that have done this kind of thing. All of it's like on Discovery Plus, because evidently they have like 1,000 channels or 1,000 shows on their channels about paranormal, UFO, Bigfoot, all that crazy stuff, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So just figure we'd put that in there.
Okay.
And then, you know, and people listen to podcasts and they're like, well, whatever. We've talked to some really interesting people who've been brand new.
Yeah.
And wanted to know more about it. And it's good. I think overall it's probably good. Keep it alive, so maybe we'll find out something cool. So that's all I got to say about that. But yeah, Discovery, man, they got like so Discovery Plus and Travel Channel, if you're listening and you don't know where any of these shows are, that's where they're located. Yeah. So you can find just like everything from like the new series, right, with Jack Osborne and Kesha. Then you've got, Ghost of Devil's Perch. Which is supposed to be new. It's in Butte, Montana.
Oh, so we were...
and then you got Ghost Adventures.
Talking about Priest Lake, and I was like, why is that familiar? I was thinking it was because it was near the Zone of Death in Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah.
The Zone of Death is actually in the far eastern corner of Idaho, whereas Priest Lake is up in the finger, like the finger that points all the way up to Canada.
Yeah.
It's right there. So it's like super close to that.
Yeah, and the Zone of Death is like nobody claims the territory.
It's a 50-mile radius.
Yeah, so Canada doesn't claim it and the U.S. doesn't claim it, so technically there's no law there.
Yeah.
So if a murder was committed, you can't be prosecuted is what they're saying. Or, you know, it's one of those like, did you know sort of things. That's kind of weird. Maybe the Zone of Death is created that way because Bigfoot snatches people's arms off and eats them. Which
I was starting to think, but since they're not close to each other, they're like completely the opposite. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks. All right, anyway, I think we're done. What do you think?
All right.
So we do appreciate you taking the time to listen to the podcast, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you should let us know. Yeah, maybe we'll get rid of some of these allergies, man. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Allergies.
But thank you guys for tuning in. Again, everything we talk about is going to be in the show notes for each episode. We've included links to the Wytheville UFO Festival. Also, if you guys have been paying attention to our Instagram and our Facebook page. You've seen some stuff that we launched for the Bigfoot Festival. So check out the Etsy shop because we're updating that instead of some of the other places you can buy our swag, just because it just seems easier. So if you want to score some CreepGeeks stickers and other cool things, check the link in the show notes. Thank you again to our patrons. If you want to support us on Patreon, go to patreon.com and look for CreepGeeks. If you have something you want to email us or tell us about, contact@creepgeeks.com. And, oh yeah, check out our TikTok. And what else?
That's it.
Oh,
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all we got.
Oh, and we do have some exclusives for our Patreon audience. So, patrons, please check. We've put some interesting stuff up.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, there you go. So anyway, appreciate you taking time. Listen, we'll see you again. So see you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.